suffer from a troubled heart. Let me share my theories. They come in three parts. First of all, I doubt myself. Second one is that I tend to dwell. Third is up lonely as hell. What a mess. I'm sorry it took me all this time to confess my mental crimes, but I think I'm ready now. So let me introduce you to my mind. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not smart, not pretty like a star, not weak, not tough, not nearly good enough. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not small, not skinny like a dog, not sleek, not rough, not nearly good enough. Mirror, 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 mirror on the wall. I get anxious when I alcohol. Can't you see my agony? Oh, don't you care at all? All they ever say is to love yourself, but if you're wrong to lack some confidence, I know they can feel it too. We all do. I'm sorry it took me all this time to confess my mental crimes, but I think I'm ready now. So let me introduce you to my mind. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not smart, not pretty like a star, not weak, not tough, not nearly good enough. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not small, not skinny like a dog, not sleek, not rough, not nearly good enough. Don't know where to start. It's like they're crawling down beneath under my skin. Seems like all they want, feed off my confidence again, but I won't let them win. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not smart, not pretty like a star, not weak, not tough, not nearly good enough. Me, my insecurities. Let's count it 1, 2, 3. Not small, not skinny like a dog, not sleek, not rough, not nearly good enough.
Good morning, Kensington. We're so glad you're here with us today as we begin our new series, Broken and Beautiful. I'm Shauna Schwaniger, a Central Teaching Pastor, and I want to personally invite you to these upcoming opportunities here at Kensington. First, Thanksgiving baskets. Would you join me in this favorite tradition? Kensington has been distributing Thanksgiving baskets to local families for 27 years. The impact is huge, and so are the smiles. Now, last year, in the midst of the pandemic, we decided to provide gift cards as a main dish of the baskets so that people could purchase their favorite foods and create a feast fit for their own families. The recipients were so excited, we're doing the same this year. There are 2 ways you can participate: donate and deliver. Every $50 donation fills a basket, and then we hand deliver the baskets to a local family on Saturday, November 20th. Sign up early to deliver. Spaces always fill up quickly, which says what about this community? That you are eager and excited to love your neighbors and be the hands and feet of Jesus. I love it. So find out more about Thanksgiving baskets at kensingtonchurch.org/Thanksgiving. And if Kensington is your home church, baskets are also available to you if you need one. Just call our main office at 248-786-0600. The other invitation I have for you is baptisms. We have baptisms at all of our campuses on Sunday, November 21st, and that's just a few weeks away. Baptism is something we get really excited about around here. It's a step of faith and a profound moment of surrender to Jesus. We rise up out of the water with a sense that new life that we have in Jesus. I have been a part of many baptisms over the years, and I love hearing the personal stories about each person's faith journey. So if you feel the tug to be baptized as an outward sign of what God is doing in your heart, find out more and register at kensingtonchurch.org/baptism. Okay, now back to our service. We're in the first week of our series, Broken and Beautiful. And I think this whole idea of God using our brokenness is so encouraging and incredible. In God's loving hands, our broken pieces cannot just be mended, but made new. And the final result is even more beautiful than before. I believe God has something special to show us today about who He is and how He works in our lives. Thanks for joining us.
Well, good morning, everyone. The room looks a little different, doesn't it? If you're online, we're glad you're with us. You can't probably see what's going on in this auditorium, but right now I have some angry people because your chair is gone. I know how this works, man. You got the normal place you go to. Am I wrong? All right, so I promise you next week it's going to be back there, but let me explain to you what's been going on here, and it's still going on. So we have partnered with the Department of Health and Human Services to meet with people who had difficulty because of all the rain and flooding that we had earlier this year. A lot of them lost their homes or they lost resources. They're really trying to get back. They're struggling. And so there are resources available for them through the DHHS, and we agreed to host them here. And so you can see on the screen, this is what it looked like yesterday. And then we broke it down to this. Today after the service, we have to set it back up. We will see upwards of 10,000 people. We had 900 just in 4 hours yesterday in this space with 350 workers. Really doing great work to provide for them and show them love. And one of the things that I love is it brought a lot of people into this building who have never been in this building, and they're asking questions like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is a church. What do you guys do here? So we think God's going to use it also to bring people who are looking for a community of faith to our church. So thank you for tolerating the inconvenience this morning. Again, we promise you we'll put your name actually on your chair next week so you can find your spot. So we have a couple great things going on this week I want to tell you about. The first is they're both on Friday. The first one on Friday is for kids that are in 4th and 5th grade. They're going to go to a place that's full of trampolines. They're going to bounce like crazy, which makes me sick to my stomach to just think about it. But bring them there from 6 to 7:30. You can register online there, and then I guarantee when they come home, they're going to be all toned down and ready to go to bed at night. So if you have a 4th or 5th grader, or if you know someone who does, this would be a great event to introduce them to who we are and to our community. The second thing is this Friday night, right here in this room, we're going to host Mitch Albom. You might know Mitch from his radio program on WJR. You might know him from the books that he's written. I love all of his books. I've read them. They speak to my heart. They draw me into a more commitment to what matters in life. He really shares our values, if not our faith. He started 7 nonprofits in Detroit, that really serve the marginalized. He has I think it's an orphanage in Haiti that he talks about a lot that he started, and he's written some amazing books, including the one that came out last week. It's called The Stranger in the Lifeboat. I got a chance to read it. I think it will move your heart. He's going to come at 7:30. We're going to open our doors. We're going to have our own Kensington musicians playing some great live music. 8 o'clock, we're going to turn the microphone over to Mitch. He's going to tell the journey of writing this book. I don't want to give it away, so I just encourage you to grab a copy of it if you can this week, read it, and he's going to be here to autograph a copy. And if you can't get one, we're going to be selling them here in our lobby. So this is a great opportunity to also welcome people into our building who don't normally probably come here because Mitch is going to draw them. We'd love to have many of you here with us. So that's this coming Friday. So Thanksgiving is coming, right? Shauna talked about the baskets, and we're only about halfway to our goal, by the way. So if you're a procrastinator like me, you might think about getting that $50 into us so we can bless the families. But what we do here on Thanksgiving Eve as a great tradition is we gather for a time of worship together and really expressing gratitude. And it's not going to be like a normal church service where there's music and there's a message and more music. We're going to intersperse some small talks about God and gratitude and thanksgiving in a package of worship that will go the whole time. It's going to be a wonderful way for us to gather together and remember what matters in life and what we're grateful for. So put it on your calendar. You can have all the cooking, almost done by then, and you can come out Wednesday night and just breathe as we move into the holiday season, just to get some space and just worship God together. So we hope that you'll be a part of that. If you are new and you're here with us today, we do have something in the lobby called the Hub. It's hard to miss. It's all orange. That's where you can get questions answered. You can get information about who we are and how to connect deeper in the church. And then the last thing, you probably, many of you already heard that we have hired, or we found, God has brought to us a new lead pastor. Did I say nude? Yes. You know what? That's going to fill this church. Everybody wonders, how far can Kensington push the edge of the envelope? And I think we just discovered it. Oh my gosh. You know, over the years, they do outtakes of all of the stupid things you've said, and that's definitely going to make the reel. But we have a new lead pastor who's fully clothed. His name is Adam. In April, and their 5 kids. And next Sunday, he's going to be giving the message, and we're going to do a welcome. Steve Andrews, the founding pastor of Kensington, is going to be here to kind of bless him and commission him. And after each service, we're going to have cake and welcoming in the lobby. So please come back and give him a warm welcome. Well, if you heard that first song, Insecurities, I don't know how many of you would raise your hand and say, I struggle with insecurity. I definitely would. All right, many of you, honest people, and the rest of you are liars. Fully clothed liars, I might add. Insecurities. Why do we have them? And one of the biggest reasons is because we compare. We compare ourselves to others, and we don't measure up. Or people compare us to others. Maybe in our homes we were compared. But it seems to be almost a universal human tendency to not like parts of who we are, to feel insecure, to feel like people are better than us. But I want you to think for the next hour that we're together about how God might look at you. Because in the end, it's his opinion that counts the most. How does he see you? And beginning today and for the next 3 weeks in our series that we're calling Broken and Beautiful, we're going to start today by looking at, perhaps in a fresh way, how God might see you. And rather than the comparison game, that we would live under and bask in the reality of who God made us to be. Every single one of us. That's what we're going to be going. So I'm excited to do that. But before we do that, we're going to do our kind of greeting. And because we're pretty full, because we have fewer chairs, if you wouldn't mind, if there are some chairs in the middle, keep whatever social distance you feel you need. But we have people waiting to come in. As you stand up and greet each other, if you could possibly move a little bit toward the center just to make space for others, okay? So get up, be friendly, say hi to each other.
We live in a society that often throws away what is broken, with quick and sometimes cheaper replacements. It's the same with our own lives. We're quick to move on and disregard these issues and experiences that have shaped us. In doing this, we often miss how much more beautiful and powerful life can be if we embrace these moments. The journey of restoration can be slow and is unique to every individual and circumstance. God uses our broken moments to display his grace and beautiful restoration of not only our lives, but our futures.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling through the world of my creation. What you'll see will defy explanation. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want, do it. Want to change the world? There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare to pure imagination.
Do you remember when you heard that the first time? Some of you are too young to remember that because you weren't around. But the original movie about Willy Wonka. And when I heard Aaron sing that, I'm thinking of Gene Wilder, who sang it in the movie. Aaron did a much better job of that. But here we are in a chocolate factory, and we got these bratty kids that won the golden ticket, and they're there for an adventure, and they all need to go to reform school, except maybe one of them. But what was the point of that song? What was being communicated? And I think the idea was that, you're looking for something that's going to bring life and fulfillment, and it's not going to be in a chocolate factory, and it's not going to be because you somehow got the golden ticket. Really, the song is saying, would you just wake up, see with fresh eyes, to look around, use your imagination to think about what could be or what might be, and where the beauty is? Because if we're honest, this world is rather enigmatic, isn't it? You've got such amazing, stunning beauty. This is a beautiful fall morning in Michigan. And yet, there's brokenness and darkness, and they coexist and they commingle, and it's confusing sometimes, and it's frustrating, and it's painful. So what are we to imagine? Are we trying to imagine the darkness away or the evil away? Are we trying to pretend it's not there? And that's the journey we're going to go on today as we tell the story that will continue through the next 3 weeks of what is God doing in this beautiful and broken world, and what is our role in it? And most importantly today, the question is going to be, how do I see myself? How do each of you see yourself in the story that's being told right now? Before we continue with that, we're going to just take a moment to receive our offering today, and the way we receive it at Kensington is multiple ways. If you're here and you want to write a check, there's places on your way out to drop it off. If you want to give online or through the app, you can do that. But the most important thing is to understand what this moment is and what it isn't. This is not us trying to get anybody's money. None of this is about money. All of this is about life change and changing the world and partnering with God in transformation. And having been back here for a year as the interim pastor, this community is committed to change. Even what we're doing as you look to the sides and see these tables, this is just speaking into our community, into our culture with the love of God and all the ways that we're called to do that. And it takes resources to do that. So this is about partnering together, and we are so grateful for all of you that have chosen to be our partners. So I can tell the story of God, the story of the Bible, the story of life in 4 words. So this is the extreme Cliff Notes version of Genesis, the first book, to Revelation, the last book in the Bible. 4 words. The first is creation. Pretty self-explanatory. The second word is fall. That's where the brokenness that we see comes. The third word is redemption, where God steps into his own creation to change the narrative. And the fourth word is new creation. And I did it on purpose because some of you being critical of me now are saying that was 5 words, Craig. And now you're right, but it's 4 movements. So let's just review again. Creation, fall, redemption, new creation. That's the whole story. Takes a lot of words to tell it well, but those 4 words or 4 ideas capture that. So what we're going to do as we begin is I want to give context for today and for the whole series and where we're going on this journey for the next 3 weeks together. So I'm just going to unpack each of those real quickly from Scripture in terms of what each is about. So creation, as I said, is pretty self-explanatory. Not a lot to say here, but from Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, we're told that God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. So we need to start there by saying the brokenness that we see was never the original idea. The evil, the darkness, the pain, the suffering. In the beginning, when God made everything, he said himself, he evaluated his own work, and he said, this is good, this is very good. And that was God's intention for us. So what went wrong? Well, what went wrong, and I'm going to say more about this in a little bit, is what we call the fall. And it's the fall of humanity into darkness. And this is the way it's described in a couple of verses in Genesis 2 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. God said, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. And that's the brokenness. That's the death that has come into our existence. And then she, Eve, took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was Adam, who was with her, and he ate it. So the one thing God, in the beauty of his creation, said don't do, at some point in time they chose to do, and that brought in the darkness and brokenness that continues to this day. That's Act 2. Act 3 is redemption. This is where God, how did God feel about Adam and Eve and humanity and all of our brokenness, and we go wayward and we continue to do things we don't even want to do ourselves, and we do them and it brings destruction and it hurts people. How does God feel about that? And I was raised in an environment that I mostly thought God was really ticked off and always looking over my shoulder at what I was doing. I was in trouble. That's how I began to see God in my early formative years. But I understand now that the story of redemption is a story of God stepping into brokenness, darkness, and taking it all on himself for us. And one of the passages of Scripture in the New Testament that captures this is Philippians chapter 2, and I wish I had a chance to read, or the time to read 10 verses here, but I'm just going to pull out a phrase. It says, he, that's Jesus, humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. And so when I tell this story, I often do this. I go, it started with creation, and then brokenness came, and then redemption came, and eventually, we'll see in a moment, it all gets set right. And in the middle, what is this form? It's the cross. The cross represents God's solidarity with us, his love for us, the healing he wants to bring, the restoration he wants to bring. And then the fourth act, which is one of my favorite all-time passages of Scripture because there's so much hope in this, and this is what we all want and we long for. So creation, fall, redemption, and now new creation. In the very last book, the second to the last chapter of the Bible, Revelation 21, puts it this way. He, that's God, will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. And then he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. That's the hope of what's coming. So you with me? Creation, fall, redemption, new creation. That's the story of the Bible in, to be honest, 5 words. So we're going to be unpacking this, but we're going to begin, of course, today with creation. And the very first words spoken by God to human beings, and they're recorded in Genesis, were these words. Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. God said, and there's 3 imperatives in here. He said, be fruitful and increase in numbers. That's the first one. Fill the earth and subdue it. That's the second one. And then rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. What this tells us is that when God created, he was starting creation, but he didn't finish it. He left it undone on purpose because his desire is that we would join him as co-creators. He gave us ability to create ourselves. And the most evident one of all the things we create is what I'm looking at right now. God created each of us through people. I know it sounds so obvious. It's like, really, Craig, you're going to go there? But I am going to go there because to me it's astonishing that God chose to do it this way. He could have created human beings and then created more and keep creating more human beings. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. But what he did, and this tells us that he didn't create us to be chess pieces that he was going to move around some board. He created us to participate, to be involved. And then one of the ways we're involved is what I'm seeing right now. Every one of you got created by other human beings because God gave us the ability to do that. And to me, it's the most astonishing thing. I know some of you, many of you are parents. Some of you hope to be parents someday. Some of you, that hasn't happened for you. It might be a place of sorrow or pain for you, but you've been around the miracle of creation of human beings in some fashion. And I'm the father of 3, and I can still remember the Easter Sunday in 1987. We were on our way to the hospital with our firstborn. We didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but you go through this pregnancy, and you're trying to imagine, what is this person going to look like? And you have all this waiting, and my wife was 2 weeks past her due date, and we wanted to sue our doctor because that should be a guaranteed when you circle it on the calendar. And our son, when he was born, was 9 pounds, 10 ounces. That's a big baby. So we're on our way to the hospital early, sunrise, like a morning like this, Easter Sunday morning, and we're getting there, and it was a beautiful and awful day at the same time for me for this reason. Here's the awful part. I'm afraid the baby's going to be born in the car. I'm breaking every law getting there. I get there. We get inside, we go into the labor and delivery room, and back then they did a class called Lamaze. Anybody know what that is? They're teaching you, especially the husbands, to coach your wife through breathing and everything to relax so they can have this baby. It doesn't work. Total waste of money on my part, because here's how it happened for me. We go in there, she's in serious labor now, contractions, and the little chart tells you when they're really getting bad, and that's when I'm supposed to step in as the hero and touch her, rub her shoulders, talk to her, calm her down, remind her to breathe. And so I do my duty. I get there, I get behind her, I'm doing this, and she says, "Get your hands off me." Okay, I'm going to go step over here. And then her parents had just gotten there, and they were in the waiting room outside. So I said to my wife, Chris, I hope you're watching right now, Chris, because I'm still in pain over this. I said, I'm going to go outside and give an update to your mom and dad. And she said, and I'm not kidding, if you leave this room, I'm going to kill you. And she said it with enough conviction that I thought she's going to get off out of that bed and kill me. So essentially she was saying, stay in the room and watch me suffer. That was my job, and so I did that. I long for the days when the guys are outside smoking a cigar somewhere, but anyhow. So that was the hard part. Here's the beautiful part. After the labor, and a child that we made, we created, co-creators with God, came out, and they cleaned him up, and the first time I held him in my arms, Joshua, Easter Sunday, holding my son. What a miracle. What an absolute miracle. You've been there before. You've looked into the eyes of your son or daughter for the first time, or your grandchildren, or maybe your niece or nephew. You've been there before. It's just an amazing thing. And I think this says a lot about what God had in mind and what he still has in mind, that we would be involved in creation itself, that we would be creating. We were designed to be creators with God. In fact, the verse before in Genesis says this, that God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. This idea of being image bearers of God, I believe with all my heart as I look around this auditorium and imagine those of you that are watching online, that every person I'm looking at, you have a name, you have a gender, you have history, but you are, more than anything else, what defines each of us is that we bear the image of God. He created us to bear his image. And, I studied theology. There's all kinds of ideas about what does that actually mean. And they talk about, intellect and emotion and will. We're godlike. We're not like other animals. We can think rationally. We can create. We can imagine. But I think the creating part is the part we don't talk about enough. That we were created to be creators. Remember, to fill the earth and multiply it, to subdue the earth and to rule over it. And so one of the first things that God had Adam do to show that you are now to be involved in what I'm doing, we're going to keep creating and making, was he brought them together. He brought Adam and he said that he had a job for you to do. I have a job for you to do, Adam. Here's the job. Genesis 2:19. Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. I love that phrase. It's like God is bringing the animals and now he's leaning in. I wonder what he's going to name this one. I wonder what he's going to name this one. And then it says that, and whatever he named him, that was its name. There's a comedian by the name of Brad Stein who did this routine, and I can't do it like Brad did it, but I'm going to give you a little piece of this. He used his imagination and said, maybe it went something like this. So God brings the first one, and he's leaning in to see what he's going to call him, what name he's going to come up with, and Adam looks at him and he goes, hippopotamus. Well, that's pretty cool. All right, that's its name. Next one, rhinoceros. That's its name. About 10 hours later, Adam's exhausted. Cow. I'm running out of letters. Yak. And then the insects were the last ones, and he couldn't even come up with a name. He just called them what they did. The fly goes by. Fly. Now, I'm sure it happened nothing like that. But try to use your imagination to picture this. The God who made everything, the galaxies and everything that exists, all the beauty, all the complexity, all the artistry, creates human beings in his image, and then he says, okay, now it's your turn. Name the animals. And it didn't stop there. We have continued to create and invent things and do things. In fact, I imagine, think about Adam, think about the first human eyes trying to understand what they were seeing. So they look at their skin and they look at the trees and they look at everything. But when they look at their bodies, they named it fingers and hands and everything. But do you know in a single red blood cell, there's 270 million copies of hemoglobin in one cell? They didn't know that because that was yet to be discovered as we would subdue and rule over the earth. Now we have microscopes that tell us that. And all the medicine and science that helps us live healthier and longer all got created by us because we were created to create. Or maybe instead of looking at up close, they looked up into the sky and saw the heavens, the stars, those points of light, had no idea what they were, the moon. But we know now that there's something called the speed of light, and we can look out into millions of light years. How far light would travel in a year? Millions of light years out into the galaxies. They didn't know that, but we do because we've invented telescopes. We've continued to create. We create, how many took a shower this morning? Aren't you glad someone made plumbing? Hot water heaters. Did you take your horse here or your car? Think about someone just said horse. I don't believe you. Show me after, okay? But think about all the things that, since he made us to create, that we've done. And when he said, whatever Adam named him, that was their name, God is saying that I turned you loose now. And I've given you all something, more than one thing, many things in you, that I want you now to express that you're an image bearer of me through the things that you do now. And the reason why there's insecurities is we put some things up here as a real high value and some things down here as a really low value. And maybe one of the worst things we do is we bifurcate life experience by saying there's a spiritual and there's a secular. There's a sacred and there's a secular. But God didn't say that. Everything that we create is an expression of the image of God. And we've created a lot. We've gone to the moon and we've sent ships to Mars and we have skyscrapers and movies and sports teams. And I believe that God, at all of that, leans in on that. He leans into your life, wondering what are you going to do with what he gave you? What can you possibly do with what he gave you? What he gave to each of us? This was God's intent. But then, going from creation to fall, we know that things turn in a bad direction. And there's a lot more to say about this. We're not going to do it today. But my take on what actually happened here is this. God's desire in creation of human beings made in his image was to have relationship. He wanted to invite a lot of people to the dance, to be in community with God himself, who is community. But for there to be true community, true love, true relationship, there has to be freedom. We have to have the ability to make a choice. You know, anybody see the movie Stepford Wives? You know that movie? It's about if women could just be programmed to be exactly what a man would want, wouldn't that be wonderful? And the men discovered it wasn't. Because it wasn't real. They were like robots. So for God to have true relationship, he had to give us the ability to choose, to be in that relationship or not. And that's what the tree represents in the garden. And I kind of imagine in my mind that when Adam and Eve saw all that God had made in just this one garden, which could have been hundreds of square miles, who knows how big it was, that they could go to this part of the garden and say, can we have this? Yeah, oh yeah, I'm a generous God. You can have that. Can I have this? Yes, you can have that. What about this way over here? Yep. How about that tree over there? Yep, it's all good fruit. It's all for you. I made it for you. Enjoy. But here's this one thing I'm going to withhold from you. It's up to you. I'm giving you the choice to go there if you want. Because I want you to choose me. I don't want you to force to be with me. That's what the tree in the story of Genesis represents, is the necessity really that if we're going to be in relationship with God, just like with each other, there has to be ability to choose that or to not choose it. So the verse I read from Genesis chapter 3, where they took the fruit, was them at some point in time saying, we don't trust you. We think you're withholding something good. We're going to take it. And God had warned them, death will come if you do this. Didn't mean they were going to drop dead. It represented the darkness and evil of selfishness that would come into the world. And so this is what we are experiencing all these years later. And so we live in a broken place. But how does God feel about us even in our brokenness? And we're going to develop this over the next few weeks. But here's what I want to say today. That even in that brokenness, we have not lost the image of God. We are still made in his image. We are still deeply loved by God. And God invites us into all that he's doing in the world, including the redemptive story, where God now steps into his own creation to restore it or redeem it. Even in our brokenness, goodness comes, and God's goodness comes, and it can be seen. One of the places we see this very early on is in the very next book of the Bible, after Genesis, the book of Exodus. And most of you know the name Moses. I bet you probably don't know the name Oholiab or Bezalel. Anybody know those names? I didn't think so. You guys need to read your Bible more. Actually, before writing this message, I didn't know those names. But I looked at this passage, and it tells us something important about what God is up to and how I might play a role in God's story. So Moses is the leader that took Israel out of slavery, out of Egypt, on their way to the promised land. They're out in the wilderness, and everybody of the 1 million+ people that would have been with him all knew his name because he's the big L leader. Everybody knew Moses. Man, he's the guy. He's the man. God's hand is on Moses. But God's desire was for them to get to know him, and so as they were journeying, it took 40 years that they wandered around the wilderness, he wanted them to develop what I would call a portable church. The Bible calls it the tabernacle. It was a place of meeting with God that could be assembled for a season and then disassembled and carried to the next stage in their journey. And God had very specific idea of what this would look like and all the parts of it, and it needed to be designed and it needed to be built. And guess what? Moses was not that guy. That was not in his wheelhouse of his abilities. And so we read in Exodus chapter 31, this passage. I want you to just listen, or you can see it on the screen, of what God does. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah." And this is the key right here. Don't miss this. "And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge." What, to preach a sermon? No. With all kinds of skills, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. If you love crafts and people make fun of you, it's biblical. Okay? You craft people, it's very biblical. All right? "Moreover, I have appointed Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability." Who did? God gave ability. God says, "I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you. The tent of the meeting, the ark of the covenant, law with the atonement cover on it, and all the other furnishings of the tent." If you're a carpenter, if you can build stuff, that's biblical. That's spiritual. That's spirit anointed. That's God-given. "The tent and all its articles, the pure gold, the lampstand, all of its accessories, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering, and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, and also the woven garments." If you like to sew, guess what? That's biblical. That's God-given. That's God-anointed. That's Spirit-given. "Both the sacred garments for Aaron, the priest, the garments for his sons, when they serve as priest, and the anointing oil and the fragrant incense for the holy place, they are to make them just as I commanded you." Now, the point here is that we tend to reserve the work of God, what we call the work of the Holy Spirit or God's Spirit within us, to those things that we clearly identify as spiritual things, sacred things. But that's wrong. The world is not separated into spiritual and secular, or sacred and secular. Everything you see created, the handiwork, the skill, the ability. I'm talking to plumbers and carpenters, and I'm talking to artists and musicians. I'm talking to you accountants that can look at a complex spreadsheet and make sense out of it, and make the bottom line balance. I'm looking at the medical field. I'm looking at teachers. I'm looking at mechanics. None of that existed in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. We've done this. Why? Because we bear the image of God. All of it reflects the complexity, the beauty, the genius, the intelligence, the creativity, the innovation of God himself, now through his image bearers as we work out in the world. So you don't, and I don't, devalue ourselves because we can't do this. That person can do that. I can't do that. All of it is an expression of God. You know, one of my favorite movies years ago, and I watched it recently, and it's amazing how, if you go back long enough, the movies just move so slow. Like fall asleep in the middle of the movie. But this movie, The Chariots of Fire, has right in the middle of this movie something so powerful. It's a true story of a man from Scotland who was fast. He was a runner, and he qualified for the Olympics to represent Great Britain in the Olympics. But he was also a follower of Jesus and believed his calling on his life was to go to China as a missionary, and his friends and family all believed that. So they kind of felt he was wasting his time running. You need to get to China. And so there's one dialogue that he has with his sister in the movie, and the sister is just upset, and she says to Eric, God has called you to be a missionary in China, to bring the good news of Jesus to China. And here's his response to her, never forgotten it. He said, "I believe that God made me for China, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure." Do you dare to believe that when you build, when you plant, when you paint, when you operate, when you fix, whatever you're good at, that God, just like he was watching Adam name the animals, he's peeking in, curious, and he goes, "Oh, amazing, amazing." They're stepping into their potential. They're stepping into their true identity. That it actually brings God pleasure when you do what you do well. I believe that with all my heart, and I believe that's often a missed message in our culture, in our day and age. That all that we do expresses who God is. The psalmist wrote, these words might be familiar to some of you, from 139. He says, "For you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." By the way, I never noticed that till this time. I think this guy was a narcissist. Did you hear what he said? Everything you made is fearfully and wonderful, and you made me. So I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying I'm wonderful. But you know what? It's true. And I know the pain of my own life that too often, too frequently, I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see. I'm not just talking about my physical appearance. That too. But I compare. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. But I am fearfully, wonderfully made. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Exactly how God created you to be. And sometimes the things that he's created us to be get stamped down and tamped down and pushed to the sides because maybe it's not what other people value, or we got pushed in a direction. I really want to encourage you to go on a journey of discovery, of imagination. Who did God make you to be? What does he see when he sees you? What does he think? What brings him pleasure in what you do? You know, I have a friend, actually a relative, who lives not too far from here. He's a dentist who's retired. Man, dentistry is an interesting skill and ability. I'm so glad there's dentists. I'm so glad I'm not one. But he retired, and one of the things he loved to do, and he has more time to do now, is gardening. By gardening, I mean flowers and shrubs. And I've been to his place since I've been coming back to Michigan regularly, and it's astounding what he's done. And so I asked him to send me a picture, and he sent me 10. I'm going to show you 2 pictures on the screen right now you can look at. So there's the first one. That's one part of his property. Look at all the variety and beauty in there. And then here's the second one. And there's so much more. In fact, I texted him yesterday and said, how many plants, like perennials and annuals, and by the way, I don't even know what those words mean. He texted back to me. And he said about 1,200. Crazy. You give me 1,200 plants and flowers to plant, and my neighbors will get a petition to have me move away because it's going to look ugly. I wouldn't know how to do that, how to design that, how to create that beauty. Where did that come from? It's the image of God in him. That's the creator part of him. You have it too, each of you. Right here in our own church, one of our staff members, Tracy Henkel, you know Tracy, and her husband Jim, they bought an old vintage trailer that was a piece of junk, metal, just ugly, like that thing should be taken to a junkyard. And they brought it and they restored it. And you're going to see, she gave me a video. I couldn't show you the video, but there's a part of it. That thing, look at the woodwork in there. Look at the trim, the detail. If I could show you the whole trailer, utterly amazing. I wanted to steal it from them. I wanted to take it back to New York and save money on rent. I mean, it's amazing. People can do that. You give me that trailer and give me a year, it's going to look like it did, right? But some of you could do that. Do we value that? Do we see where that comes from? Do we understand that this is the work of God evidenced in you? When we create and bring beauty into the world, we fix broken things. That is the voice of God speaking into our world because he made us to be that way. He made us to create. And so in the weeks ahead, as we look into the redemptive, we'll get more into the redemptive part of this in the new creation. I want you to know that all of that is part of God's redemption. Like what I'm doing when I'm teaching like this is I'm bringing the word of God to people, and people would say that's more clearly God at work. But when you create beauty at your house in your neighborhood, and people drive by and they feel joy at God's creation, that's God at work. When someone brings their car into you to be fixed, or shows up at your house to repair a water heater that's broken, or meets you at the emergency room of the hospital to fix you up and to stitch you up, and on, the list goes on. I wish I could name everything, but you know what your profession is, what your calling is, what your passion is, what you're good at. That's all God. That's what I'm trying to say. That's all God. And it makes a difference in the world when we do it well. It moves people's hearts, even one small step toward the God who's behind all of it. That's the calling that we have in our lives to do that. Every single one of us has this. And in the story of redemption, just going to finish with this. Jesus came into the world to bring redemption and final restoration of everything. But think about how he did it. If the story is really true, and I believe it is, this is God coming into his own creation now to begin to repair it from the inside out as one of us. How did he do it? Did he take it all on himself? Did he get a bullhorn, a PA system, go around, start preaching at people, do it all himself? He's God. He could do it all himself. No, he didn't. This is what he did. Luke chapter 6. One of these days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray, and he spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. And if you know anything about this story, the 12 he chose were not the ones that would have been in the top 10 of anything. In fact, at this stage of their life, they'd been passed over pretty much. So they're fishing and they're collecting taxes and doing all kinds of things, very much in obscurity. And the Son of God comes and taps 12 of them on the shoulder after praying all night. I believe he gazed into their heart and saw something that maybe nobody else saw. He said, you're going to join me now in the most important thing in all of history. Because in 3 years, I'm going to die. I'm going to come back from the dead. I'm going to ascend to heaven. I'm going to give the job to you. Man, if that doesn't tell you something about the nature of God and how it might relate to your life, he gave the job to them. Just like in original creation, God gave the job of subduing the earth, ruling over it, to human beings that he had made in his image as co-creators. He gave the job of redemption, the story, the message of reconciliation, of love, of forgiveness, of mercy, of grace, all of that great news that we call the gospel. He gave it to 12 ordinary men. So when I look out at who's here today, I see two things. I see ordinary men and women like me, and I see extraordinary men and women who are made in the image of God. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, just for a moment, close your eyes so I can ask you to use your imagination. I'm going to speak some things, and I want you to picture it. Some questions. Can you see in this moment now God looking at you deep into your soul? Past the brokenness and the mistakes and the sin, seeing how he has designed you. He sees that skill, maybe it's hidden. He sees that passion that maybe you're not expressing yet. And you hear him inviting you to come with me to change the world. Just like he called Peter and John and Andrew, he calls us. And so as you imagine now, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What skill in you is growing or you wish could grow? What might be inside of you that needs to be called out? How has the Creator designed you to co-create with him in this broken world that needs you so much? Needs what you bring, needs the beauty you can bring, the order, the intelligence, the inventiveness. What's in you? What does God see in you? And when he watches you, he feels pleasure. How might God use the skills and gifts and abilities, which is evidence of your likeness to God and his Spirit within you, to bring redemption and healing to our broken world?
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of life. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born, in the vapor of your breath the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I can see your heart in everything you made. created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. We lost your life so I could find a relief. You left the grave behind you so alive. I can see your heart and everything's done. Every part designed and a work of art called love. You're glad we chose surrender so alive. I can see your heart in millions different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. You gave your life to love you so alive. Like you would again 100 billion times. Though a measure could amount to your desire. You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
So we wanted to end today encouraging you, and I wanted to invite you all into this last moment as we sing this together, understanding that as God has called us to be co-creators, He is for you, He's on your side, He's doing this with you. He calls you chosen and one of His own. So let's sing this together.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but He brought me into His love for me. Yes, His love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free as He has ransomed, His grace was free. While I was a slave, There's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
So I want to leave you with the question. This week, today, right now, who are you going to give permission to say who you are? Is it your past? Is it that voice in your head? Is it the person next door? Or are you going to let God say who you are? Because when we believe we are who God says we are and we listen to that voice, we are set free to be who God made us to be, who He created us to be. That's what we long for. This is why we did this service today. This is why we've come together, that we could be men and women who understand who we are in God and the freedom that is found in that. So go today blessed by God. We'll see you back here. Come Friday to see Mitch Album if you can. We'll see you back here next week as we continue this series. And as you leave, we will have prayer down front. So if you would like someone to pray with you, maybe you feel stuck right now or you have questions, there'll be some of our great prayer team members down front, okay? God bless. Have a great day.